Hey, what's up? This is Wilsfer with Abysmal Hymns, and we are back as promised with our top five albums of 2026, which has been a kind of weird year for music. From my perspective, there's a lot of old stuff that people are digging up, and that seems to be better than some of the newer stuff. But then, there's a lot of new music coming out. I think they're just record labels are holding off till later in the summer on a lot of things, and but there's still you know a lot of good stuff. Some bands are have so much good stuff they're putting out a couple albums, but
Probably the Melvins, let's
yeah,
be honest.
well they've probably got about five or six.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My Patton has a couple probably, but yeah, so if you want to kick us off.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. As I say, this was actually quite tricky because obviously I've been so focusing on moving. My reviews have been a bit stop and start of late, but I think I managed to conjure up five good ones. So I'm going to start with something a bit fast and furious, which I know you're familiar with. And you're a fan of. I'm going to start, of course, with the Crosses and their Outlier EP. Um, for those who are just a quick recap for those who have no idea who this is Dan Kubinski. He's, I suppose you could say, he's the main focal point of it in a way. And he was in the legendary band Die Kreuzen, who, of course, we featured a few weeks ago on the show. And initially, this was a project which just saw them covering Die Kreuzen songs, and then eventually decided to get round and write their own material. Though there is still a couple of covers on this six-track EP. One of them's, of course, a Die Kreuzen song. The other one's a Husker Du cover, and four originals. And I just really love it. I love. I mean, his vocals are obviously. I mean, he's not hitting those screechy high notes like in yesteryears, but he does develop another sort of very cool HR style rasp, which um, I was certainly on board with. And it's kind of heavy as well, you know. It's kind of definitely crossover vibes here without it being necessarily DRI and at a billion miles an hour. But there are also sort of moodier moments too with one or two of the tracks. So it was a really interesting release and one that I've had on repeat since I reviewed it for Ghost Cult and since you rightfully sort of pointed it my way too, because I don't think it was fully on my radar at the time. So yeah, I was mightily impressed, and it'll be interesting to see what they come up with for a full length. But yeah, I was certainly impressed with that, and I know that. Well, no, I'm pretty certain that you were too. So for that reason, the Crosses Outlier EP was one of my picks at this point for 2026.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Die Kreuzen is not going to happen, but I think
No.
this is the closest thing we're getting. And sometimes you just have to be grateful for that. The vocals were a little weird in places.
Yeah.
Even though it seemed like the old songs, he's still saying pretty close. Um, so there's just some weird stylistic choices. And, if you're gonna say, well, it's like Die Kreuzen stylistically, I mean, they were all over the place album to album. So what period are we talking about?
Well,
Uh,
I sort of felt that this little EP, in a way, should have been or could have been what Cement essentially could have been, or the follow up, the natural follow up to Cement, because it has some of those heavier, rockier vibes, I guess.
right, yeah, I can see that. It's definitely not Century Days,
No, 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 no. It's definitely
but
evolved past.
it's not as dark as October Files. So,
No. No, it definitely has its moments, but yeah, it's not quite as dense. It's definitely on the more crossover hard rock thing, but without totally immersing itself in it at the same time. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. You know, I look, I wouldn't have wanted, self-titled album part two. I mean, he's not 20, you
right,
know. So this kind of feels like a bit sort of more, I don't want to use the word dignified, but a bit more appropriate for a man of, more advanced years, let's say. Than,
right.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
it does get a little harder to get up there in the later years, unless you're like doing it consistently, you know.
sure.
And I
Yep.
think that music's been kind of hit or miss with those guys since they
Yeah.
broke up.
Yeah, I think probably he's been the most active with different projects. There's a very good project called Dead Finger, which is like an acoustic thing. And Dan actually he volunteered to send me a copy of their record. But of course, I can't really receive posts at the moment. When I move, I'll get him to send it to me. But he was so grateful for the review. What a sweet guy. Um, and yeah, I was certainly stoked that someone like that would even acknowledge something that I wrote. So yeah, good on him.
Cool. Well, my first pick is going to be, and these aren't in order. I was thinking about doing them in order, but
Hmm.
I'll come to that point another time. Um, is an album that was kind of a surprise when it came out because there was not a buzz around it. There probably would have been if anyone had known, but they just kind of dropped it. It's the new Neurosis,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
is called An Undying Love for a Burning World.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's weird because, so to replace
Yeah.
the conspicuously missing member,
Yep.
um, they brought in the dude from ISIS,
Yeah.
or Sumac, I guess we should say. I don't know if we can say ISIS online. Um, but that was the band. But yeah, so he's on board and I mean, yeah, just kind of I think it's an improvement over some of their like early 2000 stuff where they were getting kind of Pink Floyd and
Hmm.
it kind of gets back kind of picks up where like Times of Grace would have left off, I think.
Yeah.
Uh because God knows I saw them right before COVID, so it would have been we'll call it I think it was 2019, 2020 in there in that time period,
Hmm.
and they were boring as shit. Um,
Yeah.
but I saw them on in the 90s on like Through Silver and Blood and Times of Grace tours, and they were
Wow.
awesome. So, I
Yeah.
think they've kind of got a fire back to them. So,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I had a snapshot listen in preparation for the show, and it's funny. I have to say I was never a big fan of ISIS. I always found them a bit dull, but then I find post metal a bit hit and miss at the best of times.
mhm.
But I gave it a listen, and I was like, yeah, does fair credit to the guy. He does a decent job, and I kind of had got kind of a very immersive Swansea vibe to it. It's certainly a bit more post-rocky in some places, albeit done in much heavier way than any of those bands. What I personally would have loved, actually, but this is just me being a bit contrary, is if they had come back with a hardcore record like Pain in Mind or something,
Word
just
is
as
law.
complete left field. Do you know what I mean? Just like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know us, we've been doing this sort of style for years now. Here's something you weren't expecting. I thought that would have been like a really sort of a brave thing to do, but I guess they feel they've moved well past that, which is fair enough. But yeah, it was
Right. And the
sort
only
of,
album that's really hardcore is the first one.
of course, because the second one's sort of, I mean, it's fast in places, but yeah, it
Right.
starts to slow down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They'd gotten into sludge at that point. Which,
sure,
I always say that sludge is what happens when punks try to play Black Sabbath. So,
sure.
you know.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, I agree with that. So, yeah, it was a good little record actually from the bits and pieces that I heard, even though I was a bit skeptical because, as I say, I was never that enamored with ISIS. I just found them really quite boring, I'm afraid to say. But I think, props to the guy. That was a hard act to replace on a musical level because obviously that guy was so intertwined with the band that
Right, right, right. He'd been
it
going
was
with
going
them
to
forever.
be tricky, but um, nonetheless, good on him. So yeah, well done, Aaron. Nice one.
Cool. All
All
right,
right.
what you got?
Okay, so a band again that we're both very familiar with, and I don't know if you said that you'd actually reviewed this for Ghost Cult. It's the Killing Joke record, with the rather ponderous title Extremities, the Albini Demos and Life Beginnings 88. That's a mouthful. Um, as it implies, it's basically well, yeah, it's demos and then building up the songs for the 1990 album Extremities, Dirt and Various Repressed Emotions. And it was the only album to feature Martin Atkins, formerly of Pill, and then later of Pigface. And it's just, I mean, I wouldn't say like it's the most essential record in their catalogue, but if you're a big fan of Joke, like I think we both are, it definitely provides an interesting snapshot into where the band were, because this is coming off the back of a very electronic synthy record, which outside the gate was not particularly well regarded in some quarters. I liked it, but I think hardened Joke fans weren't totally on board. So it was definitely interesting to see them kind of inject a bit more power into their sound, like maybe the earlier days. And it certainly was a fascinating insight into what that album would become. So, yeah, is it an absolute must have for if you're going to buy the Joke catalog? Yeah, somewhere a bit further down the line, but I would say this is probably one more for the fans like us. So yeah, interesting listening.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's cool to see, just where it kind of falls and how they evolved in a band because I know they were in a precarious position
Mm,
right before that album came out. There's a lot of pressure on them
yeah,
and they kind of just defaulted back. There's a little more of a punk feel to a lot of it.
yeah,
And I think that that's where kind of like it transitioned into what would become their industrial back end of their career,
sure,
because you had to have that moment in order to get to, stuff like Pandemonium.
of course. And I
So,
guess in a way it kind of laid the groundwork towards like the much heavier material they do in the 2000s, as Absolute Descent and Lord of Chaos and all of that. I feel like that this record kind of put a lot of those things in place, because I don't think they were ever this heavy like they would go on this record.
not up
That
until this
point.
point. Yeah.
Up until that point, correct. Yeah. So I feel like this was the start of their slightly heavier phase, which is probably the phase that a lot of metalheads might have gotten into them. I
Right.
feel, you know.
Even
Uh,
though a lot of metalheads, discovered them from Metallica,
sure.
I
Yeah.
think that,
Yeah.
they latch on to that period more. But I mean, because if you go see them live anywhere in the 90s on, that's what you're going to get.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So, I guess since we're talking about metal, I will
hmm
pull up one of my metal selections for if we're not counting Neurosis as metal. Yes, we will count them as metal.
Sort of. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do it. Let's see. So I am gonna go. This was a follow-up. There's a lot of pressure on this band because they're kind of at the verge of, I guess, breaking as big as you can break when you're playing death metal.
hmm
Um, and I don't say that I mean, technically, I guess a band like Amon Amarth is playing stadiums, but
Yeah.
is that really death metal? I don't think so.
Not really.
Um,
No death or whatever they.
yeah.
If I don't know. I don't
So
know.
it's, they have more in common with Iron Maiden than they do Cannibal Corpse.
Sure.
Um, but this band is Frozen Soul, and the album is Play No Place of Warmth. And it's a weird one because there's some odd kind of mainstream guest appearances. The singer from My Chemical Romance is on the first song,
Oh, right.
but
Okay.
yeah, but
Jeremy
fortunately he's just screaming. He's not doing his thing.
whining.
The singer from Machine Head is on this,
Okay.
and then the singer from Sang with Sugar Bog is on one song.
Right.
So, I think it's a more song-focused album, maybe not as heavy as the previous one,
hmm
maybe not as dark. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that, you got to go through phases, particularly when you're playing death metal, which can
Mm.
be, if you're doing it wrong, it can be very monochromatic and it's
Yeah.
just all
Boring.
aggression.
Yeah.
So they've kind of grown as musicians, and there's more songwriting going on. So, can't go wrong with that.
When I was doing a bit of research with these guys, I actually went on, I listened to a lot of stuff on YouTube, and the name that kept coming up in the comments was Bolt Thrower.
Yep.
They're saying a lot of comments were like, "Oh yeah, this is like Bolt Thrower, Bolt Thrower." It's kind of weird, really, because Bolt Thrower. I mean, I tried to get into them and give them a listen. I found them a bit monotonous, and I mean, they're good at what they did, but maybe the first album aside, I found their stuff a little bit, you know. I'm not blown away. It's okay for what it is. But yeah, there are definitely similarities there. But did you mention at some point with this record that it had like an icy sort of feel that
Yeah, I mean,
because
all of their stuff is
yeah,
Arctic themed in some manner.
because you remember that Immortal record at the Heart
Yeah.
of Water, right? That's
Hmm.
the kind of vibe that I get from it. That kind of icy, um, that vibe. I mean, the production's amazing. What little I know about production, of course. I mean, as you know, it's kind of difficult for me because this isn't really my genre. But
Right, right,
what it was, I thought, yeah, it's pretty decent.
right.
I mean. Yeah, curiously, another name that came up, maybe in the vocal department, and maybe I'm being completely off here, knowing that this isn't a territory I'm all that comfortable with. But for some reason, the name Marauder came into my mind. There seemed to be a slight, I don't want to use the word metalcore, but that kind of vibe, that sort of that really
Yeah,
heavy
I can see
groove.
them.
You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
that kind of vibe came into my mind, which might have made it a little bit easier for me to appreciate rather than, Cannibal Corpse just pummeling constantly. There was a little bit more variety. So yeah, not bad at all. Pretty decent.
Cool. What you got next?
All right. So what did let's just consult my list. Okay. So I don't know how best to pronounce this band. Um, for all intents and purposes, they're called plaque marks, but the way it's spelt is PLQ space MRX. And they're a band that I reviewed for Clean Sheets, my own site. They can be described as a supergroup. So you've got like former members of Swans and Cop Shoot Cop, and there's another band called Ecstatic Vision, all these guys. So there's a musical pedigree there. And they're on Reptilian Records, which is a label I really like. A lot of noise rock and weirdness and Nashville Pussy and all this weird stuff on there. And it's kind of, yeah, it's noise rock, but I feel like it's kind of approaching to more Butthole Surfers, kind of avant-garde weirdness rather than like the sludgier noise rock that say, I don't know, couch slut play. It's nothing like that. It's
Right.
more kind of Butthole Surfers, cows, God bullies, the kind of AMREPy stuff that I really like, although I like Couch Slut, by the way, but it's more from the more traditional wing, but with some funkiness in there. There's a little bit of a funkadelic feel in there at various times. There is a song on this thing, actually, that almost sounds like Sleep. It's the third track on the record, which I should have brought it up and had it in front of me. But there's a track on here which is really quite doomy. So they're very experimental, but without totally losing touch of, as I said before, like the noise rock thing. And would help if I told you the name of the record. It's called Upside Your Head, and that's all one word. And you can find that on, as I say, Reptilian Records. So yeah, I really like these guys. It's the kind of noise rock that I can get behind a lot, rather than I don't know Hella or something. This is more my sort of bag. So yeah, if you like that side of things, I would definitely recommend people check it out.
Cool. Yeah, I think I've heard bits and pieces of it. I know
Hmm,
it probably popped up in my inbox.
sure.
And who from SWAT's what? Thor Harris is on it, or
Good question, actually. I'm just going to look at the list because I think they've given themselves like
I thought it
weird
was a
names.
drummer.
Yeah, so yeah,
So
this
it's
is
either him or the guy that played in ooh, I can't think of the guy's name now. But I think he played in Cop Shoot Cop too.
oh what Phil Pulio.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be him. Annoyingly, they haven't given their real names.
Uh,
It's ridiculous names like Cletus, Alritus, Allrightus. So they're one of those bands where, they've given themselves pseudonyms. But I think the guitarist is from Ecstatic Vision, who are like this really heavy psych noise band. But I can't tell you exactly which members, unfortunately, because they've chosen to remain anonymous of sorts, unfortunately. But yeah.
cool. All right. My next one, I guess I'll go ahead and knock my heavy stuff out
All
first,
right.
and then I will go into other forms of music.
Hmm.
This album I was looking forward to. It's the new one by Portrayal of Guilt called Beginning of the End.
Yeah.
And they backed off on this one a little bit. It's not as heavy as the previous album. Well, the previous album was the two releases that they had at the same time, which were, I think one of them was called The Christ Fucker, and the other one was the companion piece to that, which I'm drawing a blank on right now, but it was not, oh, Devil Music. Um, and they were both like extremely focused on heavy.
Sure.
Where this one finds them experimenting a little more super production on this that allows them to get into like you brought up Butthole Surfers earlier. I can hear some of that in this, the way they use samples. There's
Mm,
like a trip hop kind of beat in one song.
mm.
Um, I think that it's how you can grow as a band without selling out. They did it pretty well here. So
Yeah, I liked them. I mean, I know you had mentioned them or I'd seen them in your blog, and I knew you were quite keen on them. I gave them a listen. I thought, yeah, it's quite interesting. The best way, if people don't know who they are, the only way I can think of to describe them would be something like Black and Screamo. It would be like Converge if they got into use more sort of black metal atmospherics, or a band like Integrity. It had that kind of vibe to my amateur ears.
yeah,
And but I don't want people to think that's all they are. It's quite dense. It's a lot of variety on offer. It's just really really interesting. Um,
I
and
guess it technically still falls under the subgenre of power violence.
yes,
So yeah. If you're
yeah.
keeping score at home, that's what I guess it's technically called. And it's funny because I went and saw them a few years ago at a small club in Tampa, and they were it was like mainly hardcore kids there doing karate dances.
Oh God, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, karate stuff. Yeah, I mean, as I say, I really dug it. I mean, I thought it was a really interesting sound. I mean, some of the bands that they've supported, I mean, that's quite intriguing in and of itself. Like, there's a French band called Birds in Row that
Hmm.
they've toured with. They've gone with Street Sex and Planning for Burial. So they're definitely more, I would say, on the experimental wing of things, but well, they don't sacrifice the heaviness or the attitude. So yeah, no, I was impressed. It was a good record.
Yeah, they do a pretty interesting split with Street Sex.
Ah, okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
they're big
No,
buddies.
yeah, it's that's a band that I've kind of heard bits and pieces from that I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, they're
But
worth checking out for sure. All right,
absolutely,
cool. What you
nice.
got?
All right, so I think okay, I'm going to go with Deeper Graves, and I know that this is a band that you're obviously familiar with, because like me, you have an appreciation for Jeff Wilson. I think he was started his career, was it Nacht Mystium,
Knock Miss Team,
and
right?
Mystium, and then he guested with Abigail Williams briefly. But the band that he's best known for that I recommend people check out is Chrome Waves, which is amazing, like post black metal mixed with shoegaze. Deeper Graves tends to be sees I would see them as more of a post punk influenced band. I believe this is God, their third record at last count. I mean, he's so prolific, this guy. It's like he puts out a record either every year or every other year in some project or other. But I remember like I've pretty much reviewed every single one of their records for Sleeping Shaman because I like them that much, and it's a continuation of what they've done. It's very dense. He's got a very unique voice. Yeah, it's if you like The Cure, if you're into any of that sort of 80s post-punk with a bit of black metal darkness thrown in, I think you'll get a big kick out of it. So, and the record's called Pull Me Towards the Dark. So, yeah, I said dark, that seems quite appropriate as well. So, yeah, definitely check that out, folks. Deeper Graves.
Cool, yeah, it is a good album. I mean, it's funny, it's not the only band that he also just released another band called The Secrecy
Sure. Yeah.
that's a little more post-punky maybe.
Yeah.
Or with that, there's a little more like Flock of Seagulls and Killing Joke in it.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, once again, he's always good at what he does. So,
Yeah.
um,
Doing it for a long, long time.
right.
And he's got his
And
own
I
label
used
as
to
well.
really love Knock Mystium. I mean, they got back together. I don't know if Jeff is still involved with them or not.
And the dude, a bit like the main guy, was a bit of controversy with him, isn't he? A bit of an
Yeah, I'm
oddball.
sure he got canceled, He's a
Yeah,
drug addict.
on point. There's a surprise.
Blake Judd, yeah. I mean, it ranges anywhere from, you know, I'm not gonna even get into what was
Yeah,
supposed to have done. So,
fair enough.
it's hilarious, kind of. Uh,
Kind of sad,
but
but
what
there.
I will talk about is I'll keep the Cure theme going, and
Mhm.
my next pick is going to be by a band that incessantly tours with the Cure.
Yeah.
It's The Twilight Sad, and the album's called It's a Long Goodbye,
Mhm.
which the singer wrote about his mother's death. And yeah, I mean, it's consistent with everything they do. So
Yeah,
there's no
yeah,
complaints.
yeah,
They're probably one of the best, like, and most legit post-punk bands because they're one of Robert Smith's favorite bands. So.
yeah. And they appeared at that bloody awful Isle of Wight festival with The Cure. The rest of that lineup was just awful. But yeah, I had to listen to these actually. What stood out for me, and it's quite unusual in England to have bands that do this, is he actually sings in his native accent. So they're a Scottish band, and
Right.
not heard that since the days of the Proclaimers. So I was really, really, really surprised. I was just like, okay, that's different. I was not expecting that. So that was kind of cool. And yeah, as you say, it was kind of post-punk in spots. It's kind of, I was worried that it was going to be twee because for some reason I had lumped it in with sort of Bell and Sebastian and Arab Strap and all of that. But
Mm-mm.
thankfully, it was nothing like that. It actually was very different to that. Although it's indie in places,
Right.
uh, thankfully the darkness kind of overshadows, pun
For
intended,
sure.
all of that. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with what I heard.
Cool. All right. What you got?
All right, so well, I suppose it'd be my final choice. Is a guy that I've brought up on the show before. I'm a big fan of. It's Barry Adamson, and his soundtrack work. The album's called Scala, and it's a soundtrack to a documentary about a very famous I think it was in Soho cinema, which featured films from the likes of, oh my God, David Lynch and oh, many, many different people, John Waters, all those sorts of people, some of whom Adamson's gone on to work with. And it's a soundtrack album. If you're into things like John Barry, if you liked his work on the Lost Highway soundtrack, then I think you're going to get behind this. I think it's 22 tracks. It's weird with soundtrack music. It's something I've been getting into the last few years. People kind of think it's a bit incidental and uninteresting, but I think otherwise. I think he follows in the best tradition of people like John Barry and Ennio Morricone and things like that. And he produces a kind of a darkness to the sound as well. It's like late night London, basically. Um, and it's certainly different to some of the stuff he's been doing in recent years, which has seen him go more into sort of jazz and soul and that kind of thing. But whatever this guy does, I'm going to buy. So I definitely recommend people check out. this record. So yeah, Barry Adamson and Scala.
Yeah, so I'm a huge David Lynch fan, so I will give it a listen.
Yep.
Funny enough, the band that even though they have nothing to do with David Lynch, but they
Hmm.
always make me think of him is the band Morphine.
Sure. Yep.
Um, so yeah, I'd be interested in hearing it.
Yeah,
And
if you
it's
like Morphine, it definitely has that jazz noir vibe to what some of his stuff's, well, some of the earlier solo material, but this album too. So if you're into that, you'll definitely appreciate what this guy has to offer.
cool. I'll have to check it out. I love Morphine's one of my kind of my second tier of favorite bands.
Yep, can't go wrong with them.
Cool. Well, my last pick is probably the only thing they have in common with morphine is drugs. And it is kind of, on the left side of my wheelhouse when it comes to pop music. And it's a band called, well, an artist who performs under the name Slater,
Hmm.
and the album's The Worst Girl in America. And if you're gonna do pop music, this is how you should do it. I mean, she like screams in places, and she has these anthemic songs, but they're very like there's like a almost like reminds me of Die Antwoord in a little bit because there's such a like white trashy element to it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's well done and it captures that vibe. And if you're gonna listen to pop music, because there hasn't been a lot of great pop music this year. I keep waiting for something to happen and it's just kind of bubbles around. But yeah, this would be the standout album. So
I'm
later.
I'm obviously conscious of time because we're going to get zoomed at some point, but
Right.
make a couple of I did write a couple of things down when I heard a bit of a record. For some reason, I put down Kesha, I put down Cardi B, not a woman I particularly like, not a particularly nice person. I also put down Goldfrapp for some reason. It sort of brought in memories of that. It's kind of a very Minimalist sort of hyper over the top vibe to what she does, or am I way off on that? That's
No,
the
no, no. Yeah, I can
um,
see that.
I mean, it's like pop music but done to 11, like, and it's like Taylor Swift but with the PG element taken away and ramped up even more.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I would say it's like Kesha, but
yeah,
the uncensored version.
yeah, it's like Two Life Crew, the cut, but maybe not quite as
Yeah, not as
muddy as
graphic.
that.
Not as
um,
graphic.
I mean, I don't know how I feel. I'm a little bit conservative in some ways, so I don't know how I feel about all the sex positive stuff. I mean, each to their own and what have you.
Right.
Not my cup of tea on a lyrical standpoint, but I'm not a girl, so I don't know. Maybe I can't relate to it on that view. It's well produced, some interesting experimentation there. Is it something I'd jump into? I'm not sure, but I can sort of see why you'd appreciate it. If you're going to listen to pop, at least let it be as outlandish and as over the top as possible. I get it.
Right.
I understand
Right.
that.
Yeah, I
So,
wouldn't say it was dark, but it's headed
no,
in that direction.
sure. Yeah, I get that.
It would be once the drugs wore off.
Yeah, sure. I did see a dreaded phrase for the album as well called Electro Clash, and that kind of summed up some dreaded names like CSS and the Klaxons. I thought I'd erase the memory of those bands
No, right, right, right.
who were just god awful and overrated, but thankfully it's not quite in that vein.
Yeah, I think she did a better job of because Charlie XCX did that
Yeah.
soundtrack to Wuthering Heights
Right.
with
Yeah.
like John Cage, and it was kind of different.
Mm.
Um, so
Yeah.
she's kind of took advantage of the void that Charlie XCX left. Although she's putting out a new album. It'll probably be terrible though. That's fine. She's due for a stinker. She had some good ones, so
Fair
you
enough.
can
Yeah.
only maintain when you're doing that type of thing for so long unless you're I mean, like even look at Taylor Swift, like she switches it up all the time, so she doesn't put out any two albums that are really the same.
Fair
There are
dues. Yeah.
not a lot of I'm not gonna even say just pop artists. Not a lot of artists do that, you know.
No, no, exactly. Yeah, I hear you, man.
Cool. Well, we will be coming to you next week. There might be some changes in format and things like that, but we will keep you updated and click all the buttons that you need to click. Thank you.